Information, inspiration, motivation. You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you're going to get all three of those things and more. I'm your host, author, speaker, and book enthusiast, Dom Brightman. Every Monday and Thursday, you're going to hear the voice of a different author sharing their stories of how they had to overcome some trials in life to become the best versions of themselves, publish their work, and get the most out of life, and to help you get the most out of your life.
And today on the Going North podcast, we're back at you again with yet another author, but not just any author. This wonderful author right here is a past TV personality as well as an international poker coach and a mindset coach with an awesome book. She has years of experience, and she has been endorsed by some of the greatest in the world, most knowingly the legendary motivational speaker Zig Ziglar before his tragic death in 2012. And you're probably wondering who this wonderful person I have today. It's the one, the only fellow DB herself, Miss Donna Blevins, Ph.D. How are you today, ma'am?
Tom, I am absolutely fantastic. I'm thrilled to do a podcast with you.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast as well. It's just amazing how we just connect with people all over the world through podcasting.
It certainly is, and I love today going back and listening to some segments of your podcast. I like your tone. You've got a fantastic voice and a great personality, and I think you've come a long way in a short period of time. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks a bunch. And it's coming from a wonderful lady who is very tall and gets to look down at a lot of people.
Well, now let's talk about that, because yes, I am 6 feet 5 inches tall, but even though I'm physically taller than other people, it's not looking down at them, because our body is simply our vehicle and our mind is the driver. And how we look at life determines our reality. And I'll let you know, I am 6 feet 5 inches tall, and my husband is one of the few people I look up to, and he's 5'3".
That's right. Saw that on, I think it was the acknowledgments page in the beginning of your book. Like, wow, that's amazing. That is amazing indeed. So what led you to writing the book? Because I've read some of chapter 1, and it was very, very powerful. Mind going deeper into that?
I'd be happy to, Dom. I started mind shifting when I was a child, but there weren't the words for it at the time. It was a practice that I got into after I actually had an experience related to dying. I had tuberculosis when I was 6 and had one of my lungs taken out during a biopsy. And by the way, did you know that people who have tuberculosis are likely to have stunted growth?
Wow.
I just thought I would give you...
You champion overcoming the odds. Look at you. That is awesome.
Well, what happened during the time when I was in surgery, my heart stopped, and it stopped for 6 minutes. And when your heart stops for more than 4 minutes, you will have brain damage. And they call it a near-death experience. But, Dom, it wasn't a near-death experience. I was gone. I mean, I was in that place of light, and it was absolutely joyful. There wasn't a figure there. It was simply bright light. And when I came back and I woke up, I knew I couldn't say where I'd been, because in those days, and this was 1955, and you can do the math, you can figure out how old I am. It was 1955. They would have put me in a mental institution, a state mental hospital, if I had shared with them what I experienced. But I started thinking things differently, because when I was in that place of light, I was completely aware. I was no longer 6. I was 142. I mean, I was completely, absolutely aware, and it was an ageless place. And when I came back, I was afraid, as I said, to say anything, and I spoke no words until 2 weeks had passed. And then I thought, well, I better say something. And I said, "What's for dinner?"
Oh, man.
And I started doing a lot of reframing how things were, and it's interesting because the 10 years after that, I was really focused on that. But then when the hormones clicked in, and it seems to then take over your life, I went through a lot of different experiences, and the fact that 5 years ago, on Halloween of 2013, I had the final draft, at least I thought the final draft was finished, for my book, Mind Shift on Demand, because I had taken a lot of training on different types of mind-shifting philosophies. And I guess if you would describe who I am, I'm a hybrid. I'm an Eastern philosopher coupled with Western medicine. You know, I believe that that needs to pair, like combine. And I was standing up from my computer looking at the big screen that's attached to my computer, and I was looking at one of the mind shift exercises on the screen, and it was like it's almost like I was a brat. I had my hands on my hips, and I'm looking at the screen, and I said, I want something that proves my mind shift exercises work, and I want proof now. And I stomped my foot like a out of control teen, and there was a lightning flash, and I had kick-started a clot, I guess, and I had a massive center left brain stroke. And as I'm hitting the floor, and I crashed into the floor, the first thought I had was, be careful what you ask for. And I was able to practice my mind shift exercises as I was airlifted from my local hospital to the University of Florida Teaching Hospital. And all along the way, they're saying she will never be able to speak fluidly again. It'll take 8 to 9 months before she's able to regain her ability to speak. And along the way, I'm continually using I call it my internal remote control, where, it's just imagine what your TV controller looks like, the one you have for your cable box. But imagine it's only got a few buttons, and my internal remote control has a cancel, has a delete, has a fast forward, has a stop. And I continually deleted and canceled what people were saying, and rather than buy into the disease, I chose to shift the way I was thinking. And I started using my mind shift exercises. One of them that I actually saw that you had downloaded from my site, mindshift&nbsp.com. Today I saw that you downloaded it. Thank you very much. And it's only a 4-minute mind shift exercise. It's taught in 4 minutes. You can actually do it in seconds once you become accustomed to it. But rather than 8 to 9 months and being garbled, I was able to speak fluidly in 3 days.
That is so amazing. I mean, especially going through a stroke. Oh my gosh. Especially the way you just wrote that chapter, I could just picture the nurses and the doctors' expressions, just see you talking, especially as well as you do.
Thank you. And I think we can, as I've said so many times, our body is our vehicle and our mind is our driver. And how we think, how we talk to ourselves, our self-talk is what creates a reality. And what I discovered because of that stroke, and I want to tell you that that stroke was a blessing. It was a gift. Because what I was able to discover because of that stroke was that we do have the ability to rewire our neural pathways in our brain. I had no idea, none whatsoever, what I was doing. But I said, where are my words? I could hear and understand them completely. I simply was unable to say anything. In the center left part of the brain is the area that controls your ability to speak, and it also, we are cross-wired, so I was also affected on the right side in several areas. My right side of my face drooped. My ability to write with my right hand was out of pocket. When they wanted to know what my medication was that I was on, and I grabbed a pen and I started trying to write, and I wrote like squiggles, these little squiggles, and I could only say 2 words, by the way, and I'm doing that, and I could say Donna, which was my name, but it came out really weird. It was Donna, and the other word I kept saying was crap. And every time I said it, they laughed and they laughed. But I really had fun being airlifted because I chose to detach and observe. And as I did, what happened is I disconnected fueling that stroke. Because, when someone is dealing with an illness and they talk about it all the time, they seem to get worse. Have you ever noticed that, Dom?
Oh, yes, ma'am, I have.
But if you are able to think and consider what's happening in different light, your life changes. And shifting the way I thought was the ability of my brain to go find those words. And what was interesting was I'd like for you to imagine that all of your words that you have are in file folders in your brain. And imagine that there's this huge wall, huge room with 4-drawer filing cabinets on it. Imagine that. Now also imagine that you pull open those drawers and you take all those file folders and you put them in the middle of this huge, huge room. And what do you do to find a word? Well, has your desk ever been cluttered?
Yeah.
Well, that's effectively what had happened with the words. And I made a list of the words that I wanted to speak, thinking, what would the words be that I needed to know when I'm going to go to a foreign country, if I want to learn a foreign language? Because effectively it became a foreign language because I was getting reacquainted with the words. And I made a list. The first word was hello. And in my mind's eye, I start looking through file folders trying to find hello. And when I found hello, it was interesting. I opened up the file folder, and it was like a child's book. And the letters popped up, like a kid's book where they pop up. You have these images. And I thought, okay, how exactly does that sound? And all of a sudden when I thought that, there was this button that popped up in this file folder. And I said, oh, a button. So I pushed the button and I said, hello. I thought, oh my goodness, that's my voice. That's how I say it. And I said, well, do I say it a different way? And then another button popped up in another corner of the file folder. And I pressed that button and it said, hello. I thought, okay, yeah, I do that differently. Is there other ways? And another button came on, and I pushed that button. And when I pushed the button, it said, hello. And it was interesting because I was getting reacquainted with the words. And when my husband shared the story with his shrink, actually, his shrink said, "Have Donna come with you the next time you come." And I said, "What's he want to see me for?" And he said, "I don't know. He just wants to tell you something." And so I went down to the VA hospital with my husband and to the shrink, and he said, "I want to tell you what you were doing." He said, "You were actually rewiring your neural pathways because of the brain plasticity." And I said, "I don't know all those words, but I will learn them." And I said, I don't understand. I mean, it's like I didn't have to go find every word. I just did that. I did that process for about 48 hours straight, drinking plenty of water. I was energized and continually taking a nap and waking back up and doing it. And he said, "You trained your brain how to do that." And just imagine, you see these movies where it's confirmed that we use maybe 10% of our brain. So just think how much uncharted territory there is in our mind.
Wow.
Yeah. And about a year ago, I had another heart procedure because I had the stroke actually occurred because I had consistent AFib, atrial fibrillation. And because
man.
I said, "Can you guys fix this?" And they did, and they had to do another procedure. And I had some aphasia, the residual effect of a stroke. Sometimes it comes back if your body is stressed. And because of this heart procedure that I had, I was under general anesthesia for 7 hours, and it stressed my body. And when I came out of it, my right arm was doing some things like when they have you close your eyes, and and the arm was like, it's kind of floating down by itself, and I was frustrated, and I said, "Please do another MRI." And when they did an MRI, they said, "There's nothing new." And I was actually looking at this MRI, and I said, "Well, what is that?" And there was this black ball about the size of I was looking at a screen that had my brain was the size of my brain, and it was about the size of a golf ball, and it was a black spot. And they said, "Well, that's where your stroke was." And I said, "Then what is that?" And they said, "Well, that's the damaged area. It is completely dead." So the primary part of where it usually controls your ability to speak was gone. And my brain had the ability to rewire itself. And we have a power within us if we just think differently rather than owning a problem.
Beautiful indeed. Be able to overcome that and still keep your sense of humor. I love the fact that you named Chapter 1 a stroke of genius.
I'm glad you like that.
Yeah, and it's amazing that it happened on, at least the stroke anyway, it happened in Halloween. It's like, wow, trick or treat. It's like you got the treat and the trick at the same time, and the treat was kind of painful in a way. I mean, it gave you the fodder to really prove and battle test your knowledge for the mind shift technique, but at a cost, it actually gave you another story to tell, which is an amazing thing.
Thank you. What else would you like to hear about today? Anything I'll share with you.
Oh yeah, before we recorded, I found out that you were on the show The Jeffersons back on season 7, episode 6. It was amazing. Only 5 lines, you said.
Yeah, it was an under 5-line part. They had wanted a tall woman to be a bouncer. They were having a men's stripper show. It's called, you know how today that becomes a fashionable thing. Like the girls go out and watch guys strip, and it was unusual in those days. But I was one of the owners. I founded a personal management firm called Above All Enterprises. We were a personal management firm for tall and large-sized people for TV, film, advertising, and public relations. And our byline was, "We're heads above the rest." And I was called by the casting people for the Jeffersons, and they wanted me to come in and read for the part. And I told them I wanted them to take, some of my girls, because, take them. I'm the personal manager. I didn't want to do the acting, and they said, yes, but you're exactly what we want for the part. And I said, well, I'll go come and read for the part if you will please take at least 3 of the girls. And they did. At least they had some experience doing that. And interestingly enough, there are 2 of the girls who worked with us at that time, and I actually trained them to be convention models, because hostesses at conventions. Because in those days, when people would say, "Oh, you're so tall, you should go be a model," there was no way to actually be a model in those days, because you had to be the perfect cookie cutter size, and tall was maybe 5'10", but not 6'5". However, along the way, I discovered that working at a convention was exactly the place to develop a good following. I was able to learn how to work a convention's booth. And let's face it, at 6'5", if you put me in hot pants and hooker boots, you're going to be able to get anybody to stop at the booth. And I actually, in those days, I trained tall models how to work conferences, and 2 of them are still making money working conferences today, nearly 40 years later. One of them is 6'4", and she actually lives in Las Vegas, and I see her quite often when I go there to compete in a tournament and the poker tournament. But she's been with one of the companies that she's been with for many years. So it's nice to know that I've had some impact on people's lives, and it's long-lasting. And I'm hoping that Mindshift On Demand will have that same effect. When I shared my signature Mindshift exercise called Isn't That Interesting, the one that I had a short 4-minute audio of it that you downloaded today, when I shared that on a complimentary webinar 2.5 years ago, I got an email. It was a small following. I had maybe 30 or 40 people watched between live and replay. And there was an email that came in from someone I did not know who had opted into the list and said, "Donna, you saved my life." And you see that in print and you go, yeah, tell me more. And the reply I got back was one of the things that absolutely insisted in its own way that I had to get these Mindshift exercises in print, because he said that he had a gun and 1 bullet, and he had a pistol, and he put it on his coffee table, and he was ready to use it. He opened up his email, and he was ready to say goodbye to his family. And something about the replay subject line, who knows, prompted him to open. He thought, well, I'll go ahead and listen to that. And as he was listening, there's one part where it says, bring a situation to mind and forgive yourself for being where you are. And he said he just fell down on his knees and he cried, and he cried, and he said he's going to put that bullet in a plexiglass and send it to me as a poker card weight.
Wow.
And he's a great ambassador today of Mindshift On Demand. And if I could have effect on one person in that magnitude, possibly other people might be able to use the Mindshift exercises in their lives and relieve some of their stress, relieve some of their anxieties, make their life better, help them to control their emotions and control their mind and have the life that they want and deserve. Just maybe.
more than maybe indeed, it will indeed. I mean, if you're going to receive a poker weight, that's a poker card weight from a guy who almost committed suicide, that's one heck of a powerful memento and a gift from someone who actually got their life shifted for the better. I mean, that is really powerful indeed. That's a blessing right there.
It is absolutely a blessing, Dom. And just last week, I get a scanned document from a woman who was actually the first woman to buy a print copy of the book before it was actually finished. I pressed the wrong button, and it went up on Amazon. Yeah, you've done that on the internet, haven't you? And it went up on it. It went up to. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it published, but not published for sale. I needed to have what they call a galley so we could read it and do some more changes. But her son is in federal prison, and she had heard about the book, and she ordered that copy even before it had 103 changes, and they must have been minor because I must admit I have this perfection witch that's on my shoulder. You may know who that is. I mean, you may have had him or her visit you too before.
Oh yeah.
And so she sent that book to him, and I got this handwritten. She sent me a scan of a handwritten sheet, and he said, I would recommend Mindshift on Demand for anyone because it helps me deal with stress on a daily basis. It helps me to settle my mind. It helps me to find a positive place even in the midst of a negative situation. And I was just dusted when that came in and blessed.
Oh, yes, ma'am, indeed. And I bet it gifted you with some more confidence to make sure you publish the work out like you did in the past and keep it pushing it to the world.
Yeah, yes, and I know that the next step is I'm going to be doing a really fast 3-module course on getting out of your comfort zone, because one of the things I think that people have difficulty with is understanding that in order to grow, you do need to push yourself a bit. And we have our best ability to grow when we go into that place of outside of our comfort zone. We do take calculated, careful risks to learn. And when we learn something, interestingly enough, statistics show us that it takes us doing something at least 6 times before it truly becomes ours. And I don't know about you, Don, but I'm impatient when I think, well, I didn't remember that. I need to go back and reread that. But it does literally take our mind, except for those geniuses who have the kind of memory that immediately sees things. But it takes 6 times to learn anything, and we all are different learners. Some of us are visual learners, and some of us are auditory learners, and we learn better when we hear something. And some of us are experiential learners, and we learn better when we do. And what I do know, and I had originally seen these statistics, back in the 80s, that said when you see something and you want to remember it, and you're a visual learner, you will probably remember about 30% of it. When you hear something and you want to remember it, you'll probably remember maybe 25% of it. When you're an experiential learner, that means doing something, and you do it, you might remember 45% of it. However, if you combine all 3 methods, visual, auditory, and experiential, that means if you see it, if you hear it, and if you physically do something with it, then you have a probability of recall 90% of the time. I think that's why workbooks are so important. And taking action. You know, when the book The Secret came out, 10 years ago, some people said, oh, I had great results, and a lot of people start complaining about they couldn't get results with things. One of the reasons is that it was about thinking differently, but the whole key is that you have to take action. And I believe that we have a way to do that without needing to meditate for 3 hours a day. And I call it the 10-minute-a-day mind shift master plan. And after the short program that I'm going to be doing in the next month to 6 weeks, I'm going to have a master class. And it's going to be this 10-minute-a-day mind shift master plan done in 10 minutes a day rather than thinking you need to sit down and meditate for 3 hours a day. Because let's face it, you're worth 10 minutes a day to learn how to control your emotions and your mind and thereby your life.
Amen to that. And I'm actually glad you're doing that too, because it's like not everybody has 3 uninterrupted hours a day. At least regular 9-to-5 folks don't have that.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, have you ever seen something that you thought you'd really like to take, but you said, I just don't have time to do that class? Have you thought of that, Dom?
Oh, yeah. Of course, especially now.
Yeah. And I've created this 10-minute-a-day program over a 6-week period, only 10 minutes a day, and where I've crafted questions. I call them subliminal tasks, because the way we ask ourselves questions, the words we choose, set ourselves up for either success or failure. It's a fact. And, you know, I've always been a believer in affirmations, but I found they weren't working. And then I met a man called Noah St. John. I met him more than 10 years ago, and he had coined a word called affirmations.
Right.
Affirmations. And it has to do with the power of the why. And when you craft a question so that you ask a question in a positive way for your subconscious to respond to, because our subconscious is non-judgmental. Our subconscious answers whatever it is we ask. If we ask a question like when I was playing basketball in high school, I would say, why am I such a poor basketball player? My subconscious mind would go about anchoring that belief that I was a poor basketball player. And I asked myself that I would continually think that way for 25 years, because I played basketball for 5 years when I was in high school. And by the way, I wasn't slow. We didn't have junior high in those days. 5 years in my high school, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So for the 5 years I was in high school, my high school had a girls' basketball team. By the way, they didn't have one before I got there, and when I left, when I was graduated, they just quit because I was apparently the core of their basketball team. But when my brother's coach came to me when I got to high school and said, Donna, do you know how to play basketball? And I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, you want to learn? I said, not particularly. And he said, why? And I said, sir, I can't walk across the floor without stumbling. I had grown 9 inches in the 5th grade.
Wow.
And my body had not yet caught up with itself. And I was clumsy. I mean, let's face it. You grow that fast, you know, you reach for a doorknob and it's moved. You sit down at the toilet and it seems to be further from you're further from it today than you were yesterday. And so I said, I don't want to learn. And then 2 weeks later he came back and he said, we have your team. But I was such a poor basketball player, I thought. But I couldn't dribble. And I was what they call a spot shooter. I found 2 spots, and I would practice from those spots, and the girls would bring the ball to me, and I did a double-handed overhead shot, and I would just, hold the ball way above my head, and I'd take my time because nobody could take it away from me.
There you go.
And I would shoot, and I would miss, and I would shoot, and I would miss. And every now and then it would go, shoo, it would go in. And as I said, at the end of every game, I'd say, why am I such a poor basketball player? And I graduated in 1967. Fast forward 20 years. 1987, I was on a daytime talk show with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And in the green room before the show, Kareem asked me the question, did I play basketball? The most asked question I've had in my life. And I told him the story that I just shared with you. And he said, well, what was your average over those 5 years? And I told him, and he threw back his head and he started laughing. Kareem is laughing at me. And I almost was in tears, and I just didn't know. I just looked down, and he said, do you know Magic Johnson? And I said, well, yes, sir, I do. And he said, well, his average this year is 23 points per game. And I said, so? And he said, well, he's the best basketball player in the world, we think. And I had an epiphany. I had one of those awakenings. And I said, do you mean that I was a good basketball player since my average per game over 5 years was 36 points?
Wow.
And
wow. Wow.
Yeah, he said, no, you weren't a good basketball player. He said, you were a star. And I had another one of those awakenings because it was at that moment that I realized I had been counting the wrong things. I had been counting the number of times I missed rather than the number of times I scored. And that's when I started thinking about how that why question is so damaging. And we have to reframe it. And we need to craft that question. Why am I becoming better at what I'm doing? You have to find some positive within the negativity so that your life is uplifted, because oftentimes we have no control over what's going on around us. All we have is our perspective.
Wow. That is really powerful indeed. That is really powerful indeed. It's counting the right things that matter. That is so true.
With that concept of asking the right question, if you think about what the mind is, imagine an iceberg. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks after my stroke, I had my first coaching session, a one-on-one group coaching, which is what I call it because it was a group, but I would open up one person at a time. And only 2 of them knew that I had had a stroke, because the last thing I wanted to do was to publicize it, because then if you have a problem, it's like, I see it on social media so much, people are talking about their problems, and people start going, oh, you poor baby, and they're just sending, rather than praying for someone and wishing them well, they're putting energy into that disease. So I wanted to keep that kind of like my baby. You have a creation, and it's kind of like when you're writing a book. You want to keep that baby to yourself. You want to just nurse it, and you want to craft it before you put it out there for readers. it has to be matured to the point where it's healthy enough for people to read it. And I was going to talk about an iceberg, and when I was trying to find that word iceberg, the word wouldn't come out of my mouth. And it just, I knew the word was there, but rather than get frustrated about it, what I decided was to ask them to help me find the word without telling them I had a mislaid word. And I said, you're in an area that is very, very cold, and there's something that is floating in the water, and you see about 10% of it, and about 90% of it is below the water line. And someone said, oh, that's an iceberg. Another one said, yeah, that's an iceberg. And I said, exactly right. Now, that's an iceberg. And what I started doing when I said iceberg is I actually have a spot on my left wrist where I tap, because when you're re-anchoring a word or trying to remember something, you need to do something physical. And so I just have a spot that I tap. You can do anything. You can tap on your breastplate, or you can tap on a finger. You can tap two fingers together. Just something that you can do, because when you're doing something physical, it helps you remember that. But the concept was, I wanted to share the fact that your mind is like an iceberg. Our conscious mind is the part that you see above the water, and the subconscious mind is below that. And the successes that we see, or the failures, that's in the conscious mind. That's what people see. Everything else that we experience is below there. But this is something that's a little frightening. The subconscious mind is a perfect recorder. It sees and perceives everything. It's just a lousy playback system, because it plays back things and experiences that are highly charged with emotions. Hence, PTSD. That's why warriors have flashbacks to experiences that were highly charged with emotions or physical trauma. And in reality, we Americans experienced virtual PTSD as a result of 9/11, because we were engrossed with watching the TV and rewatching the towers fall time and time again. And I came across people after people after people who were traumatized because of that, and effectively it was the same mechanism as PTSD. And so we need, when we deal with something like that, when we're watching news and we're caught up in that trauma, we need to detach and observe it rather than to become so engrossed that it overwhelms our subconscious. And before we imprint whatever we're watching as a reality to us, a trauma to us, because we can virtually experience a trauma. We can virtually experience go through the same steps as people that deal with PTSD. So staying detached from watching and being in the news, when something happens, note it. But please, turn your news off. Mute your phone. Stop letting social media drag you into a dark hole, because unfortunately it is, unless we learn how to detach and observe. Have you found that?
Oh, yes, ma'am, indeed. That's why I stay away from basically almost all news in general, and make sure those are my social media profiles, that they're usually positive people that usually put out positive messages.
Yep.
Well, and speaking of positive things, I'm pretty sure there have been some books in the past that have really inspired you to write yours, or books that you just really enjoy reading. Mind sharing a title or two that really has inspired you?
Gosh, which books? Well, I actually did, when I talked about The Secret, she has done a collection of she pulled in a lot of the philosophies. I went back to school in 2007 to get my master's in metaphysics, and I dearly loved the books on the metaphysical aspect. Titles are eluding me at the moment. Think and Go Rich, of course, is a book that has been a powerful book because the concepts in that have to do with the way you think and the way you talk to yourself and a self-proclaimed value. Titles. Other book titles. Which ones come to mind? I'll ponder on that. What are the books that have truly affected your life positively, Dom?
Tons of them. The Bible, that's an easy one. Mm-hmm. And almost anything by John Maxwell, especially his book, The 21 Qualities of a Leader. That one was really powerful, and Napoleon Hill is always a good choice. But another author has written a few great books. His name is Steve Chandler, and he wrote a book called 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself, as well as 100 Ways to Motivate Others, and those are a couple as well. I mean, there's been a lot, but those are just the ones that really stick out to me.
Yeah, the one I'm thinking about now is The Breakthrough. Hang on. Let me just, what is that? The titles of that. See there, it's eluding me, but that's okay. I'll just use Breakthrough. I'll just ask Google to give me a hand here. Well, it's eluding me at the moment, but there's a book about actually working on how you ask yourself questions, and there's quite a few on breakthrough principles, but it has to do with dealing with the blocks and finding the blocks and peeling back those blocks. So as I said, the titles are eluding me. Of course, I was raised in the Bible as well. My mother's mother, I would spend summers with her, and every night there was no TV. There was a TV, in that time. TV did come out, in the mid-50s, and we ended up getting a TV. And, it was kind of one of those that you had to go to the TV and turn the channels, that?
Before the remote, right? Way before the remote. It was only black and white, and there was only 3 channels, by the way. Only 3 channels. Can you imagine that? Only 3 channels. But there was none in my grandmother's and house, and every night we'd read the Bible. And I had read through the Bible 3 or 4 times. But as far as book titles, go with yours right now, because the book titles are eluding me, and I'll just, rather than saying, pulling something out of the air, I would say that today, the book that I go to when I'm thinking about where I need to be, I actually pick up my own book, Mind Shift on Demand, because it's become my today's Bible. Oddly enough, it's a very interesting read because I read it as if I don't know the writer, and I pick it up and I think of a number, and I simply open it up to that page, and it's like the universe tells me which number to pick, because whatever's on that page or a few pages after that, it's appropriate for that day. So it's kind of my daily bit of meditation. That is beautiful indeed.
You like that?
Yeah, daily meditation, that's really awesome. It's like you read everybody else's books, and then you just go back to your book, and it's like, wow, it actually is really awesome. You get to read your own book as a devotional. It's like, oh, shoot, that's what I was thinking back then? Oh, my gosh.
And my mother is 92, and my mother has read the book 3 times. Now, the first time she started reading it, may I say, I've got to say the word. It's not a really bad word, but it's a little off-color word, and I'll say it, and if you want to cut it out, you can do that. But my mother, at the age of 91, because the book was published when she was 91, and she said, I want to tell you what I think of your book. I said, okay. She said, when I first started reading it, I thought it wasn't shit. And she said, but then I got into it, and she said, everybody ought to have this book because every parent needs this book, every child needs this book, every person in a relationship needs this book, every person that's dealing with stress at work needs this book. And I said, Mama, why didn't you tell me you were going to say that? I would have turned on the video camera. I mean, can you imagine having that testimonial from your own mother?
Oh, man. Nice.
Yeah. My goodness. So what can I help you with today? Do you have, let me put on my coach hat, my Mindshift coach hat. Is there something that you've been dealing with that's causing you any stress? You don't have to tell me what it is. Mind you, you don't have to disclose that. Just tell me if there's something that's causing you strife.
Hi. I'd probably say procrastination. That's probably my thing.
Okay. How do you feel about that? When you rate it like you would pain scale, 0, it doesn't bother me at all, or 10, it's just awful, it's terrible, I really hate myself for it. Where are you in relationship to that?
I'd probably say about a 5 for that one.
Okay. So, would you like to shift the way you're thinking about that procrastination? Would you like to shift away from that, the way you're thinking it, so that you can actually get things done?
Oh, of course.
Okay. So, would you be so kind as to close your eyes? And can I walk you through my mind shift exercise? Isn't that interesting? Would you like to do that?
Sure.
Okay. Close your eyes. And first of all, I'd like for you to forgive yourself for procrastinating. Just forgive yourself. Because we are so hard on ourselves. Just forgive yourself. That's the first step. Just take a breath and forgive yourself. And number 2, I'd like for you in the second step, I'd like for you to name it. Other than procrastination, or I'd like to ask you to show it, have it take a form. In your mind's eye, I'd like for you to give it a form, what that procrastination might look like. Just ask it to show itself. Now, just let me know if you see something physical, if you can see something physical in your mind's eye. Do you see something now?
I see a jack-in-the-box.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Okay. So, now what I want you to do, just look at that jack-in-the-box, and in your mind's eye, just keep your eyes closed. In your mind's eye, I want you to step back 1 step from that and just notice it. Now, as you're stepping back, what you're doing is you are disconnecting from it, and as you've now asked it to take form, it's no longer out there and all around you and encompassing you. It is now finite. You have taken the responsibility of disconnecting and stop fueling it. And as you step back 1 step and notice it, just savor it for a moment as it starts to fade and move away from you. And now what I'd like for you to do is to say with me, isn't that interesting? Say that out loud. Isn't Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting?
Good. Say it with even more feeling one more time.
Isn't that interesting?
That's right. Just keep your eyes closed, and I just want you to think about this and just notice it. As you say that, it's becoming smaller. Remember, by giving it a form, it is finite, no longer out there and all around you. It is finite. Now what I want you to do is I want you to open your eyes, look up and to your right, and now pivot your entire body. If you're in a chair that'll swing around, pivot your entire body about 45 degrees to the right and continue looking up. What you're doing is you're accessing the right hemisphere of the brain, which is your creative part of the brain. Now what I'd like for you to do is ask, where would I rather be? Go ahead and ask that out loud. Where would I rather be?
Where would I rather be?
Good. Ask it again.
Where would I rather be?
Ask it again, but even softer now.
Where would I rather be?
And just let it go. Go ahead and open your eyes and come back to me. Now what I'd like for you to do, you were about a 5 before. Now I'd like for you to rate how you feel about that stress of procrastination. Remember, the higher the number, the worse. The lower the number, the better. How would you rate it now?
Probably say at least a 2. Oh, man.
Okay. So you have effectively dropped 60% in 3 minutes. Now just think about the power of that, because us fretting about something about the procrastination is what keeps that procrastination power. You have asked that procrastination to show itself. You've disconnected from fueling it. It's now fading away. And anytime it comes back up, by the way, all you need to do is just take a moment, just step through the steps again. Very easy to do. Just step through it, and you're going to go, wow, it's going down more. Because literally, you can get in the habit of doing, when something jumps up. Once you become accustomed to the 7-step process, anytime something comes up, you can go, isn't that interesting? And you can literally snap of the fingers. Your brain can step through that process all on its own. That's a simple way of retraining your brain. And you can change the question or the statement of, isn't that interesting? That is a question. You can go, isn't that funny? Isn't that unusual? You can change that however works for you to make it even playful. So think about that. You've gone from a 5 to a 2 or 3 to a 2 in the snap of the fingers. And all you need to do, 10 minutes a day. I'll have to let you know about the master class.
That's right. Maybe I'll one day get a black belt in this like you, right?
It's easy to get a black belt in this, and all you need to do is to do it consistently for a short period of time. And I believe that it takes only 40 days to anchor any habit. But we have to do changes in small steps rather than trying to do wholesale changes in our life. Just pick one thing at a time and work on that. And it's astonishing how our life improves with tiny, tiny habit changes.
Well, and speaking of habit changes and snappings of fingers, if you were to go back in time and you were 25 again, but instead you're in the current year of 2018, what advice would you give to yourself?
The advice that I give to myself is be aware. And I would say that it has to do with what I call remembering your papa. And it has to do with the PAPA. And we have to be aware of, first of all, our position. Where are we? Where are we right now? What is happening in this moment? And then the awareness. Absolutely bring that awareness to being. And then patience. It has to do with, rather than trying to make a game happen, we allow that game to come to us. Whatever's happening, allow it to find us. And then the last A has to do with action, is that we must take action. So just remember your papa. And as my mother says, when in doubt, just take a breath and go hug a tree.
Oh, beautiful indeed. It can even call the tree papa when you hug it, right?
That's exactly right. She always, even when I head out for a poker tournament, my mother, who's known nothing about the game of poker, I want you to understand that, she always tells me, remember to breathe. And then she says, remember to hug a tree. Because when you hug a tree, it has to do with grounding, energetically grounding, and coming back to the present.
Amen to that. So for those who want to give themselves a present in life with this upcoming holiday season, how do they keep in contact with you and be informed about your masterclass?
Just go to mindshiftondemand.com. That's www.mindshiftondemand.com. Opt in on that page. It's a very, very simple site. It's a simple site. It just has an opt-in on that page for the 4-minute mind shift exercise in audio form that I've just shared with you right here. Isn't that interesting? And then I will get on my list, and I will be letting everyone know about the upcoming classes. And my coaching clients are telling me, would you please go ahead and get those classes out? Stop procrastinating. Stop putting it off. So anyway, that's what I like to do. And I am on Facebook, and to find me on Twitter. And my handle on both of those, on Twitter, it's Big Girl Poker. Big Girl Poker. On Facebook, if you do facebook.com/Big Girl Poker, that's my brand, which is Big Girl Poker, because in the days when I started out in the poker industry, people would say, hey, that big girl over there playing poker. And my husband, they'd say to my husband, without knowing he was my husband, who is that big girl? He said, it's just a big girl that plays poker. That's where my brand came from. So I'm on Twitter at Big Girl Poker. I'm on Facebook, Big Girl Poker. And my book site is mindshiftondemand.com. But go there. Go there to mindshiftondemand.com. Opt in for that mindshiftondemand.com. Opt in for the 4-minute audio, and I will be in touch shortly. You'll get a place where you can go download that. You can listen to it online. Take it with you. I want you to listen to that. And what I didn't do, by the way, in that audio I did that one quickly, and in the audio, I overlooked saying rate where you are right now, before and after. But I want to let you know to do that, because we need verifiable, quantitative evidence. We need something that's evidence-based, because there's a part of our mind that says, yeah, but you got to prove it to me. You can't just say it's good. You got to prove it to me. So we need those numbers, and the numbers help. So be sure to rate where you are when you pull up that thing that's bothering you. But you can use it with anything. I guarantee you. I don't care what it is. You can use it with anger. You can use it with trauma. You can use it with bad habits that you have. Whatever. Go to mindshiftondemand.com. I'd love to hear from you. I am Donna Blevins, the big girl of poker, but I am a mind shift coach.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Follow the wonderful Donna on Twitter. Find on Facebook B. Well, heck, not B, but just going ahead and opt in for that master class. Get that black belt and some mind shift goodness. And heck, you can even tag her and stuff and be like, hey, big girl poker, you poked me in the right direction. I'd appreciate it. So go out there and also buy the book, too, while you're at it, and leave a review so we can get the word out there for everybody.
Hey there, buddy. Looks like you made it to the end of this episode. Since you made it to the end of this episode, do both of us a favor and stop being greedy. Stop it right now and share this episode with your friends and your fellow podcast lovers, especially those who have book clubs and want to listen to the authors who write some amazing books. Be sure to check out the rest of the backlog too while you're at it and share all those too. And in order to make the rest of your week the best of your week, remember to advance others, to advance yourself.